and welcome to another recording of the Content Marketing Studio. We're back for another season to help you create better content faster. I am your host, Pascal Fintoni, and joining me today to look at ways to build your brand online and drive sales for your business is Richard Tubb, business IT growth consultant and speaker. Richard, welcome to the Content Marketing Studio.
Thank you, mon ami. I am honored that you would host me.
Thank you very much. And you're also back. You were invited very kindly, I would say almost 2 years ago, Richard, to talk about actually creating content for what we call the tamboring industries. And today we've got Richard back to talk to us about blogging to build your brand and increase your visibility. Before we move into that, can we quickly go back to your efforts as content creator? And what are you currently doing? What is a typical week for the brand that is Richard Tubb?
Well, if I'm a little bit breathless, Pascal, you'll know, just before we came on air, actually, I was saying I've just run here from yesterday. I was doing a virtual event, and I do lots of speaking at virtual events in the IT industry. And as you imagine, everything has moved virtual now with the pandemic and that. And then I've got another virtual event I'm doing later today where I'm doing 2 presentations. I do promo videos for all of those events as well. I've got another virtual event next week, and it's just running around backwards and forwards. I do a podcast as well that's very well received in the IT industry, which I absolutely love. Very similar to this, Pascal. I just talk to some of my favorite people in the industry, have a conversation, and we basically politely let other people eavesdrop on it, and it's great fun. So I'm running backwards and forwards, but it's so much fun to be able to sit down with my friend today and talk about this thing that we do.
So can we go back into what you've just listed? It feels like, this monumental week you're going through, both content marketing for your own brand and build obviously your business for, but also now doing it for others. So you've almost proven the kind of very safe forecast that we all said, which is one day we're all going to become media companies. Do you feel like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So you introduced me very kindly as a consultant. And of course, a lot of work that I do is acting as what I call a critical friend and advisor behind the scenes to IT software vendors and software as a service vendors. But really, somebody asked me the other day, they were like, I see you everywhere. I see you producing blogs and podcasts and videos and things. The reality is what I do now, Pascal, it's morphed into, I feel like a media brand, whatever you want to call it. It's almost like a living, breathing magazine where we just produce lots of different types of content to help educate people. The thing is, I absolutely love doing it because it's just doing what we're doing now. It's having conversations with people. It is sharing things that are in my head with other people. And I want to give a big thank you to you and Leon for hosting me. It was going back a couple of years now. We talked, didn't we, about, as you said, about content marketing for serious or boring industries. And we did that a little bit tongue in cheek because lots of people say, oh, well, it's okay for you, Richard, you work in IT, it's very exciting. We couldn't possibly do it for engineering or solicitors. The reality is, whichever industry you're in, there's always something that you can talk about that other people in your industry are interested in. And the reason I wanted to thank you, Pascal, is, and you and Leon, is that topic, I've actually turned that into a book as well, which we'll be releasing at some point. So again, perhaps an example of content repurposing there. So
no, absolutely. So, but thanks very much for that. So I know that you spoke about you are a multimedia kind of making machine now, and I'm so happy I've used 4 M's in one sentence as well. But can we just focus, hope you don't mind, on the writing bit?
Sure.
And also on blogging? There is one thing that you said many years ago, which was really an eye opener for me, which is that, so my career as a marketer, really blogging was for the pursuit of lead generation and building a brand. But at one event when I saw you speak, you said, but don't forget that it should also be to serve you and to do good for you. Can you take us back again through that thought process of blogging, not just for your customers and prospects, but also for you?
Yeah, so if I share a little bit about my journey, actually, Pascal, because it might help illuminate for your community why I did this. And it was basically, so I'm a geek, I'm a technology person, I love playing around with technology, and I used to run an IT business. I started off as a one-man band, and then I built that business until I sold it at the end of 2011. And what I do now is help other IT business owners to avoid all the problems that I made. So the first good thing is there's an infinite amount of mistakes that I made. So there's an infinite amount of content that I can teach people about. But if we rewind to when I was a one-man band, I started doing this new thing called blogging. And the reason I did it was, first of all, I wanted to document my own journey. But secondly, I wanted to help other people to avoid the mistakes that I was making, to share the successes. And so I did that for, it's coming up to 20 years now. I've been blogging. I did that for years and years and years. And what actually happened, Pascal, when I sold the business, the IT business, I've shared with you as a friend, but shared with your community, I planned to just sit around in my pants eating pizza. I was going to do nothing. But what actually happened when I sold the business was, because I'd been sharing so openly about my journey, lots of my competitors, other IT businesses, started to reach out to me and say, hey, Rick, now that you're no longer a competitor, I've been reading your stuff for ages. Would you come in and share some of the secret sauce with me? So that was a big turning point for me in what I do. So sharing my journey inadvertently helped me to get to where I am today. But I'll also say this, we now call this content marketing. We put it out there to prove our authority, our expertise, to enable people to know, like, and trust us. But I did it as almost a personal knowledge base as well. So I was sharing this information as my journal, as my journey. And the interesting thing is, we fast forward sort of 15, 20 years, there's been lots of occasions where I can't remember something I did or a lesson I learned or whatever. I actually go back through my blog now, and like a journal, I will go back and reflect on some of the lessons that I learned from the past. Where was I at that point in time? What did I learn from it? So sharing the journey is super important, because yes, of course, it's content marketing. Of course, it enables people to know, like, and trust you, but it enables you to clarify your thoughts, put them down on paper. And as business owners, you and I both know, and your audience will know as well, we are so busy running to do things that we don't take nearly enough time to reflect, to celebrate our victories, to learn from our mistakes, and to move forward. So that's a long answer to a short question, Pascal, but for me, it was a very good form of reflection as well.
No, and that was the answer I was looking for, and I'm glad you kind of gave the full version, because I see it's very important. And you're right about celebrating victories. We need to find a way, particularly this moment in time, to celebrate our victories and be our biggest fan. But and there's a but in all this, is what I do know when it comes to content creation and copywriting. One can be also, the worst critic. So how did you kind of tackle the issue of not perhaps thinking you're not a good enough writer, or being overcritical and not pressing the publish button in good time?
Yeah. So I watched a video years and years and years ago from Seth Godin and Tom Peters, two very well-known sort of business folks, wildly successful. And they were talking about blogging. And they basically said something that stuck with me. They said, if you don't think you're any good at writing, write anyway. If you're worried about whether people are going to read it, write anyway. And if you get good at it, people will read it. So that's the first thing that I learned, and I wrote for fun. And as I said, the huge value of writing to clarify your thoughts and just enable you to, just to reflect on things. But really what I learned over time was to publish and be damned, as I say. So I literally just write. And the best work that I do is where it feels like a conversation that you and I are having now. So I wouldn't dream of getting in touch with you maybe in 3 months' time and saying, Pascal, that video we recorded, I'm not too happy with it now. Can you remove it? It's a conversation we had. And so blogging for me was a conversation I had almost with myself, with the community who followed me. So I put it out there. And if I said something that I regretted, I learned from it. If I said something that offended people, I apologized and learned from it. Of course, that didn't happen very often, but I just published and be damned, just got it out there, because I think writing is very good for you, but most writers, any type of writers, even those people who are starting out, they just have this fear about pressing the publish button and putting it out there. What will people think of me? What, is what I've written any good? Just publish it and be damned. Put it out there. And I can tell you now, Pascal, I've got 20 years worth of blog posts. There's probably about 4,000, 5,000 blog posts over there over the last 20 years. I'm so embarrassed about some of the earlier pieces that I wrote. I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness. But it was part of the journey. It was who I am then, and I've learned from it now. And again, that reflection, going back and seeing your progress, it's a good reminder for business owners of where we've come from and where we're going to.
Absolutely. One thing also that I spotted at the time, I think you were the early adopters of blog series, where you broke down your content into very, very clear series, almost with their own names and labels, from looking at very specific business topics, all the way to my go-to, which is your Friday favorite. Was this something that you adopted quite early on, or did it come much later?
It was about halfway through, actually. So I will tell you, we talked about content marketing, this buzzword, this catch-all that we've got for things. It was never called content marketing when I started off writing. I used to follow people like John Jantz from Duct Tape Marketing and others who wrote blogs, and it was their way of talking to me. And my blog was my way of talking to the people I was connected with. But what actually happened after about 10 years of doing this, content marketing started to become something that people talked about. And you know what? I was tweaking the SEO for blog posts, the search engine optimization. I was thinking about, who am I writing this for and what's my audience? It actually got a little bit too complicated, and it took some of the joy out of it. And so rather than just writing for the fun of writing, I was carefully sculpting these articles to make sure they got the most hits and the most views. And over time, I've learned to pull that back, and I've realized that I first and foremost write for fun. But secondly, of course, it doesn't hurt to tweak the SEO and to make sure there's an audience, because you do want to be read as a writer. But to the point about the branding, the Friday favorites and things, I did that purely to get back to doing blogging for fun. So I said during at the start of our conversation, I'm a big geek. I love technology. I love gadgets, as I know you do too. We geek out about these things. So what I thought was, every week, I'm looking at apps on my smartphone. I'm looking at gadgets. I'm speaking to people who are introducing me to great websites and tools. I'm going to write a blog post, a really simple blog post, and it takes me, a few minutes every week to write a Friday favorite. It's my favorite cool tool or app or website, and I put it out there, and it was purely for fun. So in answer to your question, the only reason that I did the Friday favorites was for fun, but 10 years on, and it's now one of my most popular segments on the website. And I work in the IT industry, but I have visitors to the blog, everybody and anybody. They don't have to work in IT. They don't have to be technicians. They don't have to be geeks. They just come and read the Friday favorites. And I hope, though, that series of blog posts conveys the fun I have with it, because I'm still a big kid at heart and I love this technology, and that's what I write about.
No, thanks very much. And I always say to my customers, be very careful. If the only reason you're writing this is because of some convoluted keyword research, your kind of energy level and gesture in which you're going to approach this project is going to show.
Yes.
And I think you need to strike the balance. All right, so let me ask you then about the transition from being a writer of your own content for your own platform to being approached by others to create content for their platform and entering the world of guest blogging. Did it happen almost slowly but surely, so you didn't realize it was happening, or was it a big transition for you?
It was a big transition of a way, and I'll tell you for why. Because when I was writing the blog, there wasn't too many people in the IT industry who were writing blogs, and I'm in a specific niche of the IT industry called managed service providers that I know you're familiar with. But for your audience, that's businesses who serve small businesses and do outsourced IT for them. Anyway, geek over with. So there wasn't that many writers who were writing about the managed service provider industry, which is surprising, but it's still the case to this day. And so I had lots of vendors and trade magazines and other people who would approach me and say, look, we really like what you write. Would you write a guest article for us? I said, yeah, sure. It was fun for me to do. I did it. But then more and more of these requests started coming in. Can you write an article? Can you write an article? And it was like, okay, this is a thing that I'm going to need to do. And I never consider myself a professional writer, Pascal, and I still to this day don't. I've written books and sold them and all the rest of it, but I never thought, oh, I'm a writer, a professional writer. But what happened was I started getting so many requests for these guest blog posts and things that I thought, this is something that I should charge for. And so I went back to people and said, sure, I'd be happy to. And I will promote it on social media and I'll bring my audience to your website and those type of things. And it's going to cost this amount of money. And they said, okay. And they got great value and they kept coming in. So now, something that I do in the IT industry is I get paid to write articles for magazines, for vendors, for others. And I love it, Pascal, because it reaches a whole new audience that I would never reach myself. And of course, I get paid to write. So who knows? I'm a professional writer without even knowing it.
Absolutely. But thanks very much. So I'm just going to open the bracket and close one very quickly and address my viewers and listeners. So what you've just heard here is Richard essentially telling you about what I call visibility in your sales funnel. When you create content and publish it on your own platform, you're working on your credibility. But if you want to really, do the prospecting bit and increase your reach to, your favorite customers, you've got to find a way to be present on others' platforms. And this is essentially what we're talking about. So I'll close the bracket now and ask you, because now you were providing a service to others, which also had benefit for your business, did you have to organize yourself differently? Did you have to put different processes in place? Because I wouldn't say the fun was taken out of the game, but you had to probably operate very differently.
Absolutely. It's a great question because, we've been friends for a long time now. We've been great friends. That if it was left up to me, Pascal, I would record videos, I would write blog articles, I would record podcasts, and nothing would happen with them. They would sit there gathering virtual dust because I enjoy this, I enjoy the recording, but then the publishing, the editing, the promotion, all that sort of thing, it's like, So I fairly quickly realized that my strength lies in, getting information out of my head and into writing videos, podcasts, that type of thing. So what I did was actually surrounded myself with people who could help me polish and to publish and to promote that material. Now, for your audience listening, they're thinking, oh, this sounds very, very complicated. But when I started out, it was all me. And let's be honest, if I was just doing one podcast a month or one video a month or a blog post a week, I could still do it as just me. But now I'm writing, we talked about at the start of the conversation, this, I record dozens of videos every day and things. There's just not enough time, and it would become a chore unless I had this brilliant team around me. So we refer to them as Team Tubb, or they've called themselves Team Tubb, which makes me embarrassed. But
I want a t-shirt.
Yeah, there should be a t-shirt for it. But we've got these wonderful people. So I've got Mark Orr, who edits videos for me. I've got a wonderful lady called Claire Jenks, who is my studio manager. So she effectively makes sure that I turn up in the right place. I do interviews and, do all the things that I should do. None of this would happen without Jenks. And then I surround myself with other people. There's a lady called Ella Orr who helps me produce my email newsletter. My PA, Holly, enables me to keep my calendar up to date. So, if that sounds complicated, it's really not. And what I want to say openly and publicly is I produce so much content now that it just would not be fun. And the content would never reach the light of day if I didn't surround myself with people who are much better at me, that actually polishing, editing, publishing and promoting this type of content. So I hope that makes sense.
Oh, and I love, the 4 Ps. Now we've got polish as well, which is one I can introduce to my lingo. Can I quickly check? So you were doing it on your own.
Yeah.
So that, I suppose, allowed you to almost capture those into blueprint and processes so that you could delegate, to the team. Was it difficult to, almost capture what you were doing, naturally with that thinking?
That's a really good question. And so I have the benefit, Pascal, I've worked with lots of IT business owners who are sensational with technology. They know how to fix things, but then they hit this problem that I did, which is, okay, if this is going to be scalable, if I'm going to do this for lots and lots of people rather than just doing it on my own, I can't keep all the information in my head. It's got to be put down into systems. So I had the benefit of working with lots of people and helping them to empty their heads down into documentation, systems, and processes. So for me, it wasn't too difficult, but the biggest challenge was, rather than just getting it done, you think, oh, it's quicker, I'll just get this done myself because it's quicker. But then the next time you need to do the job, I'll just get this done myself. And then the next time, oh, I've got to do this myself. So what I learned to do was to slow down, to think about what I was doing and how I would explain that to somebody else. Sometimes I would write it down on a pen and paper, but now we use a wonderful system for checklists called Manifestly, which was one of my Friday favorites, a great tool. But yeah, we just started off. So it was like, okay, if I'm going to produce a podcast, and then I want somebody else to edit it, and I want somebody else to write a blog post for it, and I want somebody else to promote it, I know how to do those steps, but how can I document it so that somebody else can do it? And it was as simple as slowing down, writing it down, and then sharing that with someone else. And that's how the processes are built.
Thank you very much. How do you currently, obviously, organize your team meetings and team briefings?
Yeah, so everything's done over Zoom, and again, I'll give full credit to Jenks, Claire Jenks. She is the lady, she is the engine that makes my the business tick over. So she makes sure everybody is where they need to be and do what they need to do. So essentially, Pascal, this is very embarrassing for me to say, but I'm going to share it publicly anyway. My team told me, Richard, you need to stop trying to do everything, and you need to accept that you are just the talent. So you need to turn up where we tell you to turn up. You need to say what you say, and then you need to leave us to get on with the job. And so that's what I do. I keep in my own lane, and I try to stay out the way of the team, because they are world class at what they do. They are incredibly good at what they do and much better than me at what they do. So I stick to what I'm good at, and I let everybody else do what they are really good at, and everything just hums along.
Super. Well, let's talk to the talent then. When you receive a request from a client, then what is the process from start to finish? Do you read the brief? Do you ask questions? Do you then lock yourself away in the dark room until it's ready? What do you go through as a creator of content?
Yeah, there's different processes for different types of content. So quite often, for instance, writing, I typically keep that myself. So somebody gets in touch and says, hey, we'd like you to write an article. I ask them broadly what topic, and they say, this. And I say, okay, here's 3 suggestions I might have that are interesting. And what I come up with those suggestions, Pascal, and this is maybe a tip for your community as well. The suggestions I come up with are all based on conversations that I've had with people. So if you're wondering what people want to read, think about the conversations that you've had. So it could be a question that you've been asked by a client. It could be a question you've been asked by a prospective client. It could be a conversation that you've had with somebody where you've solved the problem or they've solved the problem. And really, that's my writing is all about that. I write about the conversations that I have with people. So it keeps it very current, and it keeps it very topical. But in terms of the other type of engagements that I do, so for instance, speaking, if somebody asked me to speak at an event, and again, I'll share openly and honestly here, if it was left to me, Pascal, I would say yes to everything. And I would end up crying in the corner in a pool of goo. And I would say, turn the lights off. I want it all to go away, because I like to please people. I like to talk. And so I would end up causing problems for myself by saying yes to too many things. So when a speaking inquiry comes in now, I say to the person, that sounds interesting. We have a rule. Let me connect you with Jenks on my team, and she can see if we can make that happen. And then Jenks goes through a process where she will check my availability, first of all, so that I'm not in 2 places at the same time. She will check whether it's a good fit. She will check budget with the client to see if they, have got the money to work with us, and only then, if all of those that checklist is met, it goes in my diary, and I start preparing for the presentation. And that's very similar when we get inquiries in, similar to this one for a video. Jenks will look through it and say, yeah, of course, that's a good fit, or actually, no, Richard's not available until such and such a time. And I want to be really clear here, Pascal. I'm not saying this for you and your audience out of any arrogance. It's not like, oh, Richard's a big shot, the talent, he only, turns up. It was unsustainable unless I had a system to manage these things. I could end up writing all day and speaking all day and doing videos all day with very little to show for it. And they might not be the right opportunities. So I think for the benefit of your community who are watching and listening to this, you start out looking for exposure, but don't be surprised if people then, see you, know you, like you, trust you, and approach you for lots more of that. And pretty soon you're going to have to put some sort of filters in place. Otherwise, you'll try to be all things to all people, and that really doesn't work.
I wonder whether there's a lesson in what you've done and achieved around this idea of being clear by the audience and the sector. So some of us, will be able to essentially support organizations and clients across many sectors. But from a messaging point of view, does it help to remind people about what those sectors might be and to have some, do you have by now a portfolio of examples of that people can relate to?
Yeah, and I'll give you full credit here, Pascal, as a friend and a mentor. So you taught me about putting together a media CV. So I can tell you very flatteringly that quite often I have some people get in touch with me and they say, we want you on our show, or we want you to write for us. And I say, oh, cool. What would you like me to talk about? And they go, we don't know. We just want you to bring some of your energy. And that's very, very flattering. And I'm very honored by it. But then you end up having a conversation. Well, I could talk about this, that, the other, and it goes on. So with your advice, I put together a media CV, and it says on there, here's who I am, here's what I'm an expert in, and here's some of the things that I could speak to you about. And it gives examples. And so there's some topics that I really enjoy talking about. And of course, I put them top of the list. And so that media CV can go to people and they say, brilliant, Richard, can we book you on this time, on this date to talk about this subject? The wonderful thing about that, Pascal, is that I'm a lazy man. So that means that I can turn up for interviews and things. And I'm just as I am today. I'm passionate about what I'm talking about. I don't need to do any preparation. I'm talking about the things that I love. And so that media CV, huge public thanks to you, because that's really helped me. It's been invaluable to me to make sure that I'm doing the right interviews with the right people.
Well, I'm pleased, and it's always a pleasure to see people take action and tell me the anecdotes that is working. So, in terms of, I want to go back to the the rituals that maybe you go through to create the content. So, in my case, although I've not been invited to write, but I've been invited to speak or sometimes to craft a workshop, and so I go through this phase of excitement to begin with, to being asked, then complete utter panic about having to start, then things start to settle, then I start to be more productive, and then eventually I'm happy with the results. And so this kind of roller coaster of emotions, do you still have it all these years later?
Oh goodness, yeah. And again, I feel like I'm in a confessional here, Pascal. You're a very trustworthy person, and I'm sharing this between you and I, but I'm the world's biggest procrastinator. So I often say, as we've talked about earlier with speaking of things, I would say yes to everything. But quite often I will say yes to a project and not give it any thought. I'll be wrapped up in the excitement, and then it comes to doing it and I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow and put it off. And that builds anxiety and it builds the stress. What I've started to realize is that if I build almost a notepad, a scratch list with ideas, and the thing is, I don't force myself to think about it. So if somebody asks me to write an article or do a presentation, I will have ideas when I'm speaking to them, and I'll write that down. I've got a pen and paper here with me today from early calls when I've just been writing things down, scribbling things down, and I don't force it. I will then go away. I'll go for a walk. Ideas come to me in the shower while I'm having conversations with other people, and I'll write them down. But then I will set time in the diary to sit down, and instead of going, right, what am I going to write about, or what am I going to speak about? I've got this list of ideas. And I brainstorm and I write more ideas down, and I mind map and I connect one to one another. And there's a great friend of ours, Simon Raybould, who is
Mm.
a speaker trainer. Simon taught me about putting together post-it notes to visually map out all of these ideas. So the biggest challenge that I have, Pascal, is that there's too much stuff that I want to say. Your listeners and audience may have got the impression that I love to talk by now, and they'd be right. So when I'm giving a presentation or writing an article, I try to put too much stuff into it. So the advice that Simon gave me was write all these ideas down on post-it notes, and then you can narrow them down, you can move them around. And so that's what my process looks like. But as the world's biggest procrastinator, getting started is key. And so one final tip I would say here, I use something called the Pomodoro Technique, which is Pomodoro is a slice of a tomato in Italian. So Pomodoro Technique is literally a slice of time. So I set a timer for 25 minutes. I play some classical music or something in the background, and I sit down and I just start writing, or I just start creating. So if ever I feel that resistance to creating any type of content, I say, right, I'll just spend 25 minutes on it. And the wonderful thing is, once you get started, it all comes. And sometimes I'll get lost in writing or creating videos for a couple of hours at a time there. But that's how I overcome my procrastination.
Isn't that interesting that, the getting started is actually the real challenge? Because once you're through that,
Yeah,
it's almost like an athlete who has to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go swimming to get ready for the Olympics. But once they're in,
yeah.
and they're swimming away, they're fine. And it's just fascinating. It's just pure mindset. I can't let you go just yet. And I can't have, obviously, Richard Tubb, author of Friday Favorites, without asking you for your recommendation for all of us content creators and indeed bloggers. Are there some apps or online solutions that could make life a little easier?
Oh, great question. Yeah, so many would be the answer, but let me see if I can narrow some down. So there's a great tool by a British company called Missing Letter. And Missing Letter is, we talked earlier on about, you can create content, and there is value in just creating content for yourself. But actually, you want people to read it. You want people to view it. You want people to see it. And so for bloggers, Missing Letter, you point it at your blog. When you've written a blog, it will suggest to you a handful, 6 or 12 different tweets or social media updates that it extracts the text from your blog post. And then what it will do, it will drip feed those updates to social media over the next 3, 6, 12 months. So what that actually means, Pascal, is that sometimes I've written a blog post 8 months ago, I've forgotten about it, but it's been drip fed by Missing Letter out, and people are still reading it, and they're still commenting on it, and still going through things. So I think that's really, really useful. The other tool that I would give a big shout out for is for the team and I, we use a social media dashboard tool called Agora Pulse.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful tool, and I'm a big fan of Inbox Zero. So I respond to all emails, and every day I close my inbox down. Agora Pulse is essentially Inbox Zero for social media. And what it means is it will, in one dashboard, show you all of the comments, all of the feedback, all of the tweets you've received over all of these different platforms. So instead of having to go to Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, everything gets pulled into one place. And I'm a big believer in that if somebody has taken the time to comment on a piece of your content or whatever, you should take the time to respond. No comment left behind is the way I describe it. And so Agora Pulse really enables me to stay on top of, just responding to all of those comments that come across the board. So wonderful tool. So Missing Letter, Agora Pulse. And I could keep talking about these all day, but I'm conscious that you've only got so many hours in the day, Pascal.
Thank you very much. No, we'll add that to Manifestly you mentioned, and of course, Zoom. Yeah. Did you buy some shares in Zoom earlier this year or not?
I did not. No.
Did you, Pascal? No, I didn't. Even though I've been using Zoom forever, and we're one of the early adopters. I'm not smart enough, to spot things like this, or to know that there's a pandemic coming, and let alone that Zoom would become the number one choice for most people out there. Listen, thank you so much, for your time. Before I let you go, I'm going to ask you to take part in a fun quiz, if you don't mind,
Sure.
so that our audience can know a bit more about Richard Tubb. So, Simple questions. Just tell me what comes to mind immediately. If you could have a Zoom call with a famous person, be it from the world of science, business, or entertainment, who would be your guest on the Zoom call?
Can I give two,
You
Pascal? Is that
can. You're a special guest. You
okay?
can.
So from the world of entertainment, I would love a Zoom call with Brian Blessed. Because it's very loud and I think I'd have to turn the volume down. I think Brian Blessed would be wonderful. From the world of business, somebody I've admired for an incredibly long time would be Tim Ferriss, the author of the 4-Hour Work Week. And I love the way he conducts himself online. So yeah, Brian Blessed and Tim Ferriss. You can't get more opposites there, but they would be my Zoom guests.
Well, we'll send messages out. We'll see what happens. Next, if you could have your own online private concert, potentially on Facebook Live, who'd be the artist or the band playing for you and your family?
Oh, so again, I'll choose two here if I can. If it was an artist, I would probably choose Sting. So I'm, some of your listeners might have picked up, I'm a Brummie from Birmingham, my accent, but I moved to Newcastle upon Tyne 4 years ago now, and I absolutely love this part of the world, but love the music of the Police, love Sting, and of course Sting is from these parts of the world, this part of the world as well. But in terms of the band, I would dearly love to have a private concert from Queen, the rock music band. That would be wonderful. So if I could jump in a TARDIS and go back in time and have Freddie Mercury perform as well, I think so much the better.
That'll be special. But listen, since you have this online concert, let's get some food organized. If you could order some food for you and the family to watch the concert, what would you order?
It's a no-brainer for me, Pascal. You know this as my friend. It would be a curry. It would be a cheese naan. I mean, I come from Birmingham. It has to be a curry. The only caveat I'd put there is my wife, and this just shows you, you know, the level of love that there is there. My wife can't stand curry, but she still cooks curry for me.
Really?
So what about that for it? Yeah. But so in answer to your question, if it was for the whole family, it might be a pizza or an Italian meal. If it was just for me, I'm going to have a curry.
Okay. Now, Richard, if you could have your own radio show, what would you talk about and who would be your co-host?
That's a wonderful question. You know, there's a part of me that would love to host a phone-in from people to talk about things like UFOs, ghosts, things like that, because I just think it'd be absolutely hilarious. And as for a co-host there, I think my friend Adam Washbrook, he's not in media whatsoever, but he's into conspiracy theories and all these things. So I think I would be the straight man and be the skeptic. And I think Adam could be the person who is coaxing the listeners on to tell them about Bigfoot and their UFO alien abduction and all those type of things.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Can't wait. Now, what we are all going through will be behind us at some stage, and we'll be able to move and travel more freely. When we can do so, where would you like to go on holiday with you and the family?
Oh, wonderful. So 2 places that's immediately spring to mind. The first one would be, I would love to go to Tokyo, Japan. I'm a massive fan of Japanese culture. I'm a big fan of puroresu, which is Japanese professional wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling and things like that. So I'd love to go to the Tokyo Dome and Korakuen Hall and watch some matches over there. And my wife is into pro wrestling as well, so she would enjoy that with me. But closer to home, and it's tantalizingly close, but at the moment so far away, the country of Estonia is actually the most digitally advanced country in the world. They've, you know, it's up there in the Baltics. They've moved most of their infrastructure to a digital infrastructure. And I'm actually, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, Pascal, I'm actually an e-resident of Estonia. So you can apply for e-residency, which I have. I've never visited the country, and I would dearly love to. And I think it's a beautiful country with a very unique setup. So I would love to take the family and go and visit there. Perhaps pop over the water to Sweden as well while we're over there.
Absolutely. Wow, that's been fascinating. Richard, thank you so much for coming back to the Content Marketing Studio. For our viewers and listeners who would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way to get hold of you on the interweb?
Sure. So my main social platform is Twitter. They can find me at Tublog, Tubblog. But if you just do a search for Richard Tubb IT, Richard Tubb MSP, Richard Tubb Cheese Naan, they will probably find me on Google as well. So
Thank you so much. But to our viewers and listeners, thank you for your ongoing support. Truly appreciated. Please leave comments, feedback, and suggestions in the usual places. Until the next time, go out there and make sure your content is better and faster. Bye for now.